Good evening, everyone. I'm going to try to struggle through this. I don't know how far I'll get because it's a very long one. And I don't know if you can see all those staples in my head from where I've just had my recent brain surgery. So I'm kind of exhausted, and this to me is important enough to struggle through it. So let's get started. This time, let's try to understand why the legal meanings of words, for the most part, are ignored, and hopefully shed some light on the why. There will be a lot of opinion as well as facts in this edition. Feedback will be welcomed and is actually requested from anyone willing to get it. Give it. Let's start with what is found in Black's Law for a few words I believe are important in helping us understand the game of words and what I like to call word magic. But first, let's do a couple Bible verses. Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. Con stands for conspiracy, in stands for enthusiast. Conspiracy in criminal law, a combination or confederacy between two or more persons. Enthusiasts, those who believe far more than they can prove and can prove far more than anyone else can believe. You can get the full legal definition for conspiracy in Black's Law, 4th edition, revised. Words, symbols indicating ideas and subject to contraction, expansion, to meet the ideal sought to be expressed. An association for protection of Adirondacks. But labels whose content and meaning are continually shifting with the times. As used in law, this term generally signifies technical terms and phrases appropriate particular to the instruments or aptly fitted to the expression of particular intention in legal instruments. Words actionable in themselves. In libel and slander input the guilt of some offense for which the party, if guilty, might be indicted and punished by criminal courts. Words of art, the vocabulary or terminology of a particular art or science, and especially those expressions which are idiomatic or peculiar to it. Words of limitation, see limitation. Words of limitation in a conveyance or will, words which have the effect of marking the duration of an estate, are termed words of limitation. Thus, in a grant to A and his heirs, the words his heirs are words of limitation because they show that A is to take the estate in fee simple and do not give his heirs anything. Limitation, restriction or circumspection. Settling an estate or property, a certain time allowed by statute for litigation. The provisions of Constitution are not a grant but a limitation of legislative power. This word we'll return to later as it encompasses so many areas. Words of procreation. To create a tale by deed, it is necessary that words of procreation should be used in order to confine the estate to the descendants of the first grantee as in the usual form of limitation to A and the heirs of his body. Words of purchase, see purchase. Transmission of property from one person to another by voluntary act, agreement, founded on a valuable consideration. In a technical, oh, excuse me, in a technical and broader meaning, relative to land generally means the acquisition of real estate by any means except descent. Quasi-purchase. In civil law, a purchase of property not founded on actual agreement of the parties, but on conduct of the owner which is inconsistent with any other hypothesis than that he intended a sell. Words of purchase. Words which denote the person who is to take the estate. Thus, if I grant land to A for 21 years, after the termination of that term to A's heirs, the word heirs does not denote the duration of A's estate, but the person who is to take the remainder on the expiration of the term, and is therefore called a word of purchase. Procreation is added here to give more thorough understanding for the words procreation. My opinion here. The word descendants, as used in words of procreation, is referring to legitimate heirs. Here, too, is something we will go into more detail at a later date. Entity, a real being. Existence. Individual. As a noun, this term denotes a single person as distinguished from a group or class, and also very commonly a private or natural person as distinguished from a partnership, corporation, or association. It is said that this restrictive signification is not necessarily inherent in the word, and that it may, in proper cases, include artificial persons. As an adjective, individual means pertaining or belonging to, or characteristic of a single person, either in opposition to a firm, association, corporation, or considered in his relation thereto. Inhabitant, one who resides actually and permanently in a given place and has his domicile there. The words inhabitant, citizen, and resident, as employed in different constitutions to define the qualification of electors, mean substantially the same thing. The one is an inhabitant, resident, or citizen at the place where he has domicile or home. The terms resident and inhabitant have also been held not synonymous, the latter implying a more fixed and permanent abode than the former, importing privileges and duties to which a mere resident would not be subject. When relating to municipal rights, powers, or duties, the word inhabitant is almost universally used as signifying precisely the same as domiciled. A corporation can be inhabitant only in the state of its incorporation. Initiative, the power of the people to propose bills and laws and to enact or reject them at the polls, independent of legislative assembly. And here's a surprise: Jehovah's Witness, a religious sect whose members profess allegiance to a visionary heavenly kingdom and disclaim all duties of citizenship which they deem in conflict with such heavenly allegiance. Found that one to be surprising. Joinder, joining or coupling together, uniting two or more constituents or elements in one, uniting with another person in some legal step or proceeding, union, concurrence. Joinder of actions, This expression signifies the uniting of two or more demands or rights of action in one action, the statement of more than one cause of action in a declaration. Law of the land, due process of law. By the law of the land is most clearly intended the general law, which hears before it, condemns, which proceeds upon inquiry, renders judgment only after trial. The meaning is that every citizen shall hold his life, liberty, and property and immunities under the protection of the general rules which govern society. Everything which may pass under the form of an enactment is not the law of the land. When first used in Magna Carta, the phrase probably meant the established law of the kingdom in opposition to civil or Roman law. It is now generally regarded as meaning general public laws binding on all members of the community. It means due process of law warranted by the Constitution, by the common law, adopted by the Constitution, or by statutes passed in pursuance of the Constitution. The principal distinction between the terms lawful and legal is that the former contemplates the substance of law, the latter the form of law. To say that an act is, excuse me, to say that say of an act that it is lawful implies it is authorized, sanctioned, or at any rate not forbidden by law. To say that it is legal implies that it is done or performed in accordance with the forms and usages of law or in technical manner. In this sense, illegal approaches the meaning of invalid. For example, a contract or will executed without the required formalities might be said to be invalid or legal, but could not be described as unlawful. Further, the word lawful more clearly implies an ethical content than does legal. The latter goes no further than to denote the compliance with positive, technical, or formal rules, while the former usually imports a moral substance or ethical permissibility. A further distinction is that the word legal is used as a synonym of constructive, which lawful is not. Thus, legal fraud is fraud implied or inferred by law or made out by construction. Lawful fraud would be a contradiction of terms. Again, legal is used as an antithesis of equitable. Thus we speak of legal assets, legal estate, etc., but not of lawful assets or lawful estate. But there are some connections in which the two words are used as exact equivalent. Thus, a lawful writ, warrant, or process is the same as a legal writ, warrant, or process. Lawful man, a free man, unattainted and capable of bearing oath. Legalis homo, Latin, a lawful man, a person who stands rectus in curia, a person not outlawed, excommunicated, or infamous. It occurs in the phrase probi et legalis homines, a good and lawful men, competent jurors. Legality designates the condition of such a man. Procreation, the generation of children, it is said to be one of the principal ends of marriage. Generation may mean either a degree or removal in computing descents, or a single succession of living beings in natural descent. Hopefully, this has been somewhat eye opening for most of you. It should prove how they use words to keep most of us confused by phrases that require we dig into it deeper, or even changing the definition, which also requires deeper research. It can become overwhelming at times. In my opinion, that is exactly what they want, hoping that we will walk away from it all in frustration. Getting a true understanding can be found, but at times it takes a very long search and much time to get to the understanding. Now, for some more words that may surprise you as you see their legal meanings. Let's start with what the kind of law the colonies actually had. Colonial laws. In America, this term designates the body of law in force in the 13 original colonies before the Declaration of Independence. In my opinion, it should say before the Constitution, because that's when it was adopted. In England, the term signifies the laws enacted by Canada and other present British colonies. So, why do so many people say it was common law? Let's look at the legal definition and see if we can shed any light on it. Common law, as distinguished from Roman law, modern civil law, the canon law, and other systems. Common law is that body of law and juristic theory which was originated, developed, formulated, and is administered in England and has obtained among most of the states of the peoples of Anglo-Saxon stock, as distinguished from law created by the enactment of legislatures. The common law comprises the body of those principles and rules of action relating to the government and security of persons and property, which derive their authority solely from usage and customs of immemorial antiquity, or from the judgment and decrees of the courts, recognizing, affirming, enforcing such usages and customs. In this sense, particularly the ancient unwritten law of England. In my opinion, this raises way more questions than any it might answer. Nowhere am I led to think that the law of our land at this early time, as concerns this force and authority in the United States, the phrase designates that portion of the common law of England, including such acts of Parliament as were applicable, which had been adopted and was in force here at the time of the Revolution. So, this so far has not since been expressly abrogated, is recognized as an organic part of the jurisprudence of the United States. In my opinion, this is the part I think convinces most people that common law was the law of the land. But if you really pay attention to what is stated, you see that it was actually referring to colonial law. But as in all things, say it long enough and it becomes the truth for most people. Let's move on to the next one. Constitution. In American law, the written instrument agreed upon by the people of the Union or of a particular state as an absolute rule of action and decision for all departments and officers of the government in respect to all points covered by it, which must control until it shall be changed by authority which established it. And we're going to get into this one big time later on. And in opposition to which any act or ordinance of such department or officer is null and void. constitutional, consistent with the Constitution, authorized by the Constitution, not conflicting with any provision of the Constitution or fundamental law of the state, dependent upon the Constitution, or secured or regulated by a Constitution as constitutional monarchy, constitutional rights. Constitutional law, that branch of the public law of a state which treats the organization and frame of government, the organs and powers of sovereignty, the distribution of political and governmental authorities and functions, fundamental principles which are to regulate the relations of government and subject, which prescribes generally the plan and method according to which public affairs of the state are to be administered. 2. That department of science of law which treats the constitutions, their establishment, construction, and interpretation of the validity of legal enactments as tested by the criterion of conformity to the fundamental law. Constitutional law is one which is consonant to and agrees with the Constitution, one which is not in violation of any provision of Constitution of a particular state. Fundamental law, the law which determines the constitution of government in a state and prescribes and regulates the manner of its exercise, the organic law of a state, the Constitution. I think I'm going to stop here, folks. I'm getting exhausted and I'm winded, and we'll pick up with subject a little bit later. Thank you for joining me, and God bless you all.